fresh spelt flour. You can also use all-purpose flour, or you can use spelt flour from the store. But I have actually just ground this in the Nutri-Grain mill, and I'm going to tell you that I put this in the refrigerator, actually put this in the freezer for about 10 minutes while I was getting my ingredients ready. And I also chilled the butter in the freezer as well. Everything needs to be really cold when you're making scones, especially when you're working with whole wheat flour, or spelt, or any kind of whole grain flour, I should say. So all of my ingredients are chilled. So we're going to start the recipe. This is all done by hand because any kind of a pastry cutter or a fork or anything tends to over-knead the dough. And so we want to make sure that we're going to get everything incorporated as quickly as possible. And then we just pop them in the oven, which I have at 350 degrees preheated right now. So we're going to start with 3 1/4 cups of spelt flour. Again, you can use all-purpose or spelt flour from the store. Half a teaspoon of salt. Just going to dump that in there. 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and I do prefer aluminum-free baking powder. You can get that. I think Bob's Red Mill has it in our store, so that's much better for you. 1/4 cup of organic sugar, and then I'm just going to mix that together really quick. Incorporate those. These come together super fast. So this is actually 1 stick of butter that was chilled and cut into 4s and then cubed into little pieces. So I'm actually going to dump this in. It's still really cold, and I just want to work it enough to break up the clumps with my hands here. So this is not going to be something that it's going to kind of look like a ragged mess, but that's what we want. The idea is don't get the butter too warm while you're working it. So you just want to be able to break it up, and you can get both hands in there if you need to. And you're just pressing the little cubes out or flattening them. That's all that you're doing. I would rather have them flattened and have large flaky pieces in the dough than I would to have them be warm and really incorporated into pea size. So we're just going to keep mixing those for just a second. Okay, so there we have that. Just everything's kind of pressed together, just flattened out the butter pieces basically. And then I'm going to take half a cup of milk, 2 eggs beaten, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I'm just going to whip those together just a little bit. They're still good and cold. First I'm going to dump in this half a cup of pecans and half a cup of white chocolate chips. Just going to incorporate these in the batter just a little bit. Just get them coated with flour. Don't want to overwork a scone recipe. It's a lot like biscuits. Too much is not a good thing. So there we go. And then I'm just actually going to take this mixture, and I do it all by hand. It's kind of fun. May seem gross, but again, it's just better to be able to tell what you're doing here if you do it by hand so that you don't overwork it. So the whole idea here is just to incorporate this into the mixture. Just needs to be dampened. Everything needs to be moistened. You can just be a little more specific in there with your fingers than you could a spatula or something. Just going to crumble that up. And again, we don't want to overwork here. So once this is wet, we're going to turn it out onto my floured counter and incorporate the cuts that we need to make the scone texture. So I squeeze it through a couple times, and that is it. So let me get this messy part off here. Okay, and then we're actually just going to turn this out onto the countertop. Okay, so this is what it looks like here. It's just going to be a little sticky ball of dough. Just going to put that there. And I did just dust the countertop, and I'm just going to dust the top of my hand a little bit. And you're just going to press this down to like a 10-inch circle. So you just want to get it to where you can do that. Kind of keep your edges together so that you have a nice round shape. And then we just press this out. Make sure it's even all the way around. You kind of want the little raggedy edges. That's what kind of makes a scone have its signature there. So just press this out so that it was the same. About the size of a dinner plate-ish, okay? And then I just take my knife and you're just gonna cut a section here, just like you were cutting a pie or something. I'm gonna do 8 triangles this way. And you do wanna cut these prior to baking because the scone shape is actually kept best and crisp on the edges for the whole thing. If you try to bake this as one piece of dough, it's just gonna be more like a muffin or something, and that takes away from it. So, and I'm just gonna take my knife and I'm gonna scoop these pieces up to bake on the cookie sheet. And if they get misshapen, it's not a big deal. Just kind of encourage them back to their normal shape. That on there. And I bake mine separate like this. You can put it back in the shape of a circle if you want, but I just kind of put them on. This is an ungreased cookie sheet too, by the way. So you can also use parchment paper. We're gonna transfer these. Okay, so I have all these cut out, and I'm actually going to put these in the refrigerator, or you can even pop them in the freezer if you have room. I don't, so I'm gonna put them in the fridge. But for 30 minutes, they're gonna chill. This helps with the rise a little bit, and it helps the bran have time to soak up some of the liquid so that you get a more tender scone. And I'm actually going to put the oven on 425, which I have just done, and bump that up for the 30 minutes that these are in the refrigerator. That way the oven will be really hot when we put the scones in. So you started at 350 degrees, just getting it warm while you were working, and now we're gonna bump it up to 425 and get these out of the freezer and pop them in the oven. Okay, so they just came out of the oven. I had to bake mine about 20 minutes on 425, and I actually do these on the top rack of my oven. Depends on how your oven bakes, but that helps the bottom get nice and brown and flaky without getting overdone, so that this part can get finished. So I've just transferred them to a cooling rack, and I just mixed up a really quick powdered sugar glaze. So you can use powdered sugar and milk or powdered sugar and water, but about a tablespoon of milk to a half a cup of powdered sugar, and they do have organic powdered sugar, so that's great if you want to use that. And then I just didn't have a pastry bag and wanted to drizzle, so I just poured it into a regular Ziploc sandwich bag, and I'm going to squeeze everything down to the bottom here and just barely snip the bottom. And then you can just, well, better put it in the right hand. Then you can just drizzle a little bit of glaze over there to make those pretty. Get as creative as you want to be. It's your recipe. So I did put some parchment paper underneath my cooling rack so I wouldn't have a sticky mess on the counter. And then these are best served warm right out of the oven. So this is a great Saturday morning breakfast or Easter morning breakfast. And then we're good with that. I am going to put the recipe in the description below. So if you guys want to check it out there, and please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, and you can see videos as they come out. Thank you so much for watching.